Welcome to Podsauce. I'm Dax Holt.
I am Alesha Renee. We are your podcast discovery show.
Oh, and I'm feeling good right now.
Mama's got a brand new bag.
Brand
new location.
We are coming up in the world.
We are.
We are backstage at the Audacy Beach Festival in Fort Lauderdale, Florida.
Yeah.
The bands are getting ready to go on.
Yeah.
I am a huge fan of a lot of these bands.
I know you are.
We're gonna have to wrap this up.
Don't you rush my
AJR
greatness.
is coming on soon.
You're not going to rush my greatness.
If you are mid-topic, I will walk off.
Oh, I think you
Bang
mean
Bang
it.
comes on, I am out of here. I'm
There's-
just letting you know.
there's something
if I
about the-
hear them, I'm out.
I'll get to it because I feel like you're dead serious. So, have you ever seen the show Ted Lasso?
I have not. It's on my list to watch. I haven't seen it. I'll watch it.
Moving right along. So, Brett Goldstein, one of the stars of Ted Lasso, like I said, has a podcast. So many celebs out there have podcasts, and they've been super secret squirrel about it. I'm going to call this category, Sneaky Celeb Podcast.
I like it.
I dubbed it. I came up with it all on my own.
Oh, no. Thanks, Angie.
As I look in the direction of Angie, our producer. No, yeah, Sneaky Celeb Podcast. His podcast is called Films to be Buried With.
Okay.
Title is totally misleading. At first, I got into the podcast because Roy. But listening to it as an actor, just as someone who's also a fan and a lover of celebs, and just really wanting to get to the meat of like who they are and why they do what they do, it's such a beautifully laid out podcast. Now, to give you context, he plays this character, which is a bit wonky, so you got to like follow along with it because he goes in and out of like this voice and then this deep, dark, like, because he's a comedian.
Okay.
Right? So he dips into that. He's also an actor, so he tries to create layers within the podcast. And so he brings a celeb friend back, right? Actor or director, creator from the dead. And he asks them, is there a period in your life that you would want to revisit, right? And if so, why?
And so he's just pretending to be the other person?
No, he's talking to the other person. So the episode I listened to was Yvette Nicole Brown. If that name sounds familiar to you guys, have you ever seen Community?
A long time ago.
You do nothing, do you? You just don't watch anything. You listen to nothing.
Would you stop it? How dare the shade? The shade.
Moving along. But no, what was so beautiful about this episode was listening to her talk about like her regrets as far as work that she took that she would want to do over again just as an actor and her reason why. Or even just listening to how she said, like, Michelle Pfeiffer. I didn't know that Michelle Pfeiffer was originally offered the role in Silence of the Lambs over, Jodie Foster, who, took the role. And just finding out the reason why and how that made her pivot.
Ooh, I love those stories.
Yeah, that made her pivot in her career. Films that influenced her. Yvette referenced a film that she created that was all about love because she's out here in these single dating streets and how murky it is. And so she's really drawn to films that make her feel good. So whenever she's dating and it doesn't flush out the way she hopes it would, she listens to He's Just Not That Into You over and over and over again, and it kind of reminds her and gets her back on track. So just listening to how film plays such a huge role in your favorite actors, life or directors, I think is just such a great thing. So Films to be Buried With is
and I like this new feature, this little sneaky celeb thing.
I think it's dope.
It's because it's true. There are a lot of celebs that have podcasts that you just don't know about.
Right. So I like it. Films to be Buried With by Brett Goldstein.
Awesome. Well, we got so much more coming up. Don't go anywhere. This is Podsauce.
Welcome back to Podsauce, guys, your podcast discovery show. I'm Alesha Renee.
And I'm Dax Holt.
Dax has something for you guys.
Buckle up, people, because this is one of my favorite podcasts that I have recently discovered.
Okay.
My pick of the week is called Rate Your Pain.
Okay.
It is two ER nurses talking ER stories.
Ooh.
Everything that comes into the ER, what they've seen, what they've experienced, it is phenomenal.
Break it down.
So it's two ER nurses out of Oklahoma. One of them is actually originally from New Zealand, so she's got this phenomenal accent the whole time, which I love. But their topics, well, the first one is, what have people put in their backsides?
Spectacular.
Get into it.
And it was, the actual title of the episode is Use the Rear Entrance. And to keep this PC, they describe quite in detail some of the fascinating items people have stashed away.
Here for it. Just give me a quick, what are some of the items?
A Yankee candle. A 2-wick Yankee candle. How? I don't know, but it happened. And she describes everything that went down, how she was shocked when she, like, and I'm sorry, when I say, I'm talking about still in the glass jar it came in. Not just a candle, like a glass jar candle.
I didn't even know the rear could
No,
I didn't know the
it
rear
doesn't.
highway could
It doesn't.
expand that. I'm trying to be.
Yes, so that was one. There's another story in that same vein about an 80-year-old woman
Spectacular.
and what she has stashed away
What was in there?
her cavities.
What was in there?
What
was in there?
A glass Coca-Cola jar.
Good for you, Grandma.
Good for you.
So anyway, so that was phenomenal. And by the way, you actually learn stuff during this podcast because they're nurses. They're also telling you, medical issues and items and everything. So then the next episode I listened to was This Is Making Me Itch, and it's all about things that they've come across that make them creepy crawling.
Oof, I just had a chill, literally.
One topic was maggots.
Nope, moving along.
One topic was a spider in the ear. Yes, I was itching my body while listening. The whole thing. I'm only 2 episodes deep, and I'm already in love with this
these chill
podcast.
bumps?
And it's still brand new. It's only a couple months old, and these women are coming out with the fire. So that is my pick of the week. Rate Your Pain. Go check it out. You will thank me later. It is such a phenomenal podcast.
My God, Dax.
Yes, you're welcome.
Sadly have to give you the props on that one. Guys, to hear more about one more time?
Rate Your Pain.
Rate Your Pain. Please check out our YouTube page at the Podsauce. Subscribe. You want to get into everything that we're pushing around these parts. We're pushing in around these parts.
But we're not pushing them in the
We're
back
not.
sides of these parts.
We're not. We're pushing them out to the speakers. To all of you guys. And don't go anywhere. This is Podsauce.
Welcome back to Podsauce. We are here live backstage at the Audacy Beach Festival in Fort Lauderdale.
Because we fancy.
Look at us coming up in the world. Not too far up, but a little far up.
We're making moves. We're out of LA. We're in Florida. It feels good.
It does feel good.
Yeah.
It's fun. We get some sun on our skin.
A different taste of a background. We should take these lamps with us. Can they come in? Sure.
Well, we have a guest. I'm
Yeah.
excited. When you come to Florida, you got to get a Floridian guest, right?
Did you just make that up? Is
I
that a
don't
thing?
know.
Is Floridian a thing, Travis?
I'm actually new to the area, so I don't even know. So you're asking the wrong guy.
Funny. It's a thing. Thank you, Jeremy. We'll talk together later.
Trust him. Take his word.
Well, we got Travis Wingfield from Drive Time, which is a Miami Dolphins flavored podcast. Everything you want to know about the Dolphins. I'm going to let you explain it. You tell me what your podcast is about. Give us a quick synopsis.
Yeah, so first of all, thanks for having me here today. It's a Miami Dolphins podcast, 5 days a week. It's topical. I know one of the questions you guys had posed me was about some of your favorite episodes. They're not really evergreen, so they're really topical on that day's news and events. We get into the film and talking about the game and coaches and players. I can see your face kind of glazing over already.
You
on the
see it,
football
right?
top. Yeah.
I'm like, sports, you say?
But yeah, it's like you mentioned, everything you want to know about the Miami Dolphins on the Miami Dolphins Podcast Network. It's me solo with some interviews and guests, and it's just a lot of fun.
What I do love about your podcast, though, is that there's nothing salacious. It's truly, sports centered. And I know you made it a point, because I got his bio, to not have like clickbait topics within it. Was that intentional?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when I first got into podcasting, my thought was, do I want to be a character and really kind of drive that character, or do I want to be my genuine self? And that was the choice I made. And it comes off way better that way, if you ask me. I'm sure you guys kind of feel the same way. But I wanted to make sure I was my genuine self, and everything you get is who I am. So that's
No,
my
we want all
approach.
the smoke. We want all the smoke.
So is your podcast only for Dolphins lovers, or is this football, if you love football, you're going to love this podcast.
You're going to learn something about football if you listen to it. It's a little bit advanced, so maybe not a beginner coming in, but I try my best to explain the things I'm talking about because it's my lifelong passion is football and sports and really kind of diving into the why behind what happens on the field. So you'll learn something, but it's very catered to the Dolphins.
I mean, and I know football pretty well, but
Liar.
No.
Why are you fronting in front of Travis?
I said pretty well.
According to whom?
According to my life.
Yeah, okay.
So I listened to the episode of the Dolphins-Ravens, the Week 10, which got me fired up.
Okay.
Because fantasy football, if you know that, I have the Ravens as my defense, so they got destroyed that week, and I lost thanks to the Dolphins that week in fantasy football. So I listened to that episode from a different perspective because I was bitter, but it was a good episode. However, like I said, I know football, but the way you talk about football, you live it, you breathe it, it is your life. And so even sometimes I'm like, I don't even know what's happening in here. But I think that if you are truly fascinated and you love football, this is going to be a great podcast for you.
Yeah, and my co-host on our post-game show on the radio that we do after the games on Sunday, he listens after the podcast in one go on Fridays. He listens to all 5 podcasts, and he told me, like, you're pretty high revolutions. You're pretty fast and speedy.
Yeah.
After last week, they had their biggest win of the season. They won by 23 points, and I was on gear 6, RPMs at 10, gearing that thing up, talking as fast as I possibly could. Sometimes I have to remind myself, like, back it down.
Slow it down.
I'm just having so much fun that I can't contain myself. So you got a piece of that. That was I think our second win in a 4-game winning streak, and it's just been rolling ever since.
But you can hear the passion that you have for the Dolphins in the podcast because although I don't know much about sports, anything at all. Whenever we do podcasts that are centered around sports, I still do my Googles, you know what I mean? And I do my work. So I listened to the episode with the Texans because I'm from Houston. And one thing I noticed that you have a really good soundtrack. Who picks the music that floats through the podcast?
That's me.
Say less.
I go all around. I'll drop references. I think I had a Logic reference last week that I kind of went back to, so I'm all over the place.
Travis, I'm shocked. I would have never thought, my God. I was
well
like,
versed.
the music is popping, that's for sure. That was a note.
See, a little something for everybody.
For sure, and that's why I brought that up, because
Awesome.
I really love the fact that you put something in there that can help people to stay engaged. Right. If you're not, an avid sports listener, that's something to draw them in. So.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that. One of the notes I got back on the last year's review was a little more irreverence, and I was trying to kind of not be so diluted in just football and hitting you in the face with all these terms and facts that maybe you don't know about. So that's part of the process of bringing it more of a wide audience in.
How did you land this gig, by the way? Because I feel like this is a dream job for many, many people out there, and you got the spot. How did it come about?
Yeah, so funny enough, you mentioned dream job. I used to participate on Dolphins message boards when I was in high school and then beyond that, and just would type my opinions away, and I wanted to write as much as I could, and really kind of, that's really how I learned how to write, and that's where it started off. It was writing and then turned into podcasting because that's kind of the medium that people really consume these days. So I started a podcast back in actually the funny story is I was driving in traffic one day and I heard a Dolphins podcast, and it was the first one I had ever heard, 2015. I'd heard the Joe Rogan podcast, really popular ones. I'd heard those, but never really the more intimate ones. And I heard this podcast, and these two guys were having a debate, and I'm in my car like, no, that's not right. That's inaccurate. And I'm trying to debate them, and they can't hear me, so I'm talking to myself in my car. And I was like, you know what? I can do this. And so I found someone that was looking for it was a network called Locked On Sports, and they had a podcast for every team in professional sports. And he found me, and I was doing a different podcast that was really low at the time, like low, no budget, no money, anything like that. And he brought me on, and it was like making $20 a month in ad revenue. Just it was a hobby at that point. Yeah. And so I just started doing that, and it got more and more popular. I think I had like 300 Twitter followers, and the more I kept going, now it's at 32,000. Like it kind of blew up a little bit and got on the Dolphins' radar because I was doing, I guess, things that they liked. So after a few years of doing it, kind of building your way up and climbing the ladder, and then the Dolphins found me and called me up, and after a series of interviews, like, you want to come down and do this? And I was like, absolutely, I do.
But authenticity and passion will always get you to where you want to go. You know what I'm saying? Like absolutely. when you're yourself and you're passionate about what you want to do, like that's why Dax and I really love, doing Podsauce, because when we get to meet the people behind, the works, and we can hear their passion and see their passion, it just gives us that to keep going. Yeah. 2 things before we let you, move freely about the cabin. 1, I heard you're a huge Breaking Bad fan, as am I.
Yes.
And because this is a podcast discovery show, I want to give you a podcast that I think you'll really like, Off Camera with Sam Jones, because he interviewed Aaron Paul, who is the lead, if you guys aren't familiar with Breaking Bad, which you should be because it's 50 million years old at this point. But to just hear how he got the job and the trajectory to getting there is such a beautiful journey. And if you're a fan of the show, and I know you said it's one of your favorites, I think you'll love that. So that's one. Two, since this is a podcast discovery show, what podcast are you listening to right now?
You know, I read that question and I was trying to figure it out on the way over here.
Yeah.
And it's mostly comedy podcasts, which I don't know if I should really be promoting those because maybe
Yes, you should.
Maybe
Yes,
it
get
paints
it
me
out
in a
there.
certain light, and I don't know. But no, the Breaking Bad thing's interesting. Actually, I don't know if you in your research, I went as Jesse for Halloween one year.
Really?
With the suit and the mask and all, I made some blue rock candy and everything. It was great. So
Spectacular.
Little baggy.
huge fan. My buddy was Walter White, and he had like a skull, like the bald cap on, and by the end of the night, it had come off, and it was a disaster. But it was a lot of fun. But the podcast I'm really into, I'll go back to football. I have a couple buddies that run a podcast called the Bootleg Football Podcast. It's like what I do, but for every team. So it's very informative, kind of in your face, but very very well researched and well thought out. So you'll learn something there too.
I want to know about the comedy podcast.
Don't just breeze over comedy.
What are we
Okay,
doing?
well, I just discovered the It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia podcast.
Okay.
That is incredible. Charlie Day is one of my favorites of all time. Did you guys remember the show Workaholics on Comedy Central? They have a podcast. This is important. I think it's the best podcast ever, personally. It's my favorite. So those are a couple. Let's see what else. Bill Burr's podcast is great.
Oh, he's so good.
Two Bears, One Cave with Tom
Yeah.
Segura and Burt
Oh,
Kreischer.
that's
That's
it.
my
That's a good
that's
one.
my
That's
road.
good,
Yeah,
that's
that's where I
good.
hang
That's
out.
I can't believe you just admitted that out loud in front of people.
But that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying.
To laugh?
I think the last episode, you go back and listen to it, you're like, whoa, Travis, don't recommend that one. But
Don't have too much fun. We're on fire here. Travis, thank you so much.
thank you guys for having me. I
Yeah,
appreciate
of course. And if you want to check out Travis's podcast, Drive Time, you can head on over to podsauce.com. We'll have a link there. Is there an episode that we should highlight? I think that's always interesting. An episode that you really enjoy that you feel like people could really get something out of.
Yeah, I mean, so like I said, it's topical, so it's not really evergreen. I do have some episodes. Back when the NFL draft comes around, we interview coaches a lot of the times. Like Nick Saban's done the podcast.
Oh, dope.
Tom Herman, the head coach of Texas, did the podcast. Tua Tagovailoa did the show. Right after he got drafted, he was in his Dolphins draft hat, just put it on and talked to me first of all people. So you talk about like, the dream. That was really kind of the moment. I was like, wow, this is crazy. But
You buried that. You wait till we're closing you out before you give us the juicy stuff.
We will link to that episode. How about that?
Yeah,
Let's
And
get
the
it.
about a year and a
Texans
half
one, because that soundtrack was popping.
I love
For
it.
sure.
Don't go anywhere, guys. This is Podsauce.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Podsauce. I'm Alesha Renee.
And I'm Dax Holt.
This is your podcast discovery show.
I got one for us.
What you got?
You know that I love short podcasts.
I do.
Things that you can get in and out.
What is this section called, Dax?
Done in a day.
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 Hey.
Hey.
Done in a day. You almost
did
did
it?
it. You left me hanging on that last note, though. You definitely
I
left me
can't
hanging.
do it. I give up.
You could have just not left me hanging on the last part, and then you would have done
I thought you were hanging and you were doing good. I thought we were there.
it. What's the podcast?
The podcast for my done in the day pick is called The Thing About Helen and Olga.
Break it down.
It is a murder most foul.
How dare you? I will get up now and quit this show.
A true crime podcast.
Did y'all plan that? Did y'all plan that? Did you plan that, Edge? Little
We
weasel.
may have talked about it.
How dare you? Continue.
So not only is it a true crime podcast,
Yeah.
but it's super short, 6 episodes, like 35 minutes, but it's hosted by Keith Morrison, who does Dateline.
I was supposed to say, what is that name?
He has the most phenomenal voice. So listening to him on a podcast is great because you just
Easy.
really get into the podcast. But it's about these 2 80-plus-year-old women who have murdered. And the way that they plotted the murder of these men in their lives and the reason behind why they murdered
I
these
know that's
men.
right.
And all the people that came in their life and could have been murdered, but then did it. I mean, the whole thing is so good. There's twists, there's turns, but the reason I don't want to give away too much
Okay.
because then you'll piece it together, and I want to leave that for like episode 3.
Wait, were they friends?
Yeah, the ladies are friends.
Oh, they murdered together.
Yes.
Spectacular.
Yes.
Not that they murdered. Got to give that clarity. It's just like, how do you just get together at the bingo game, and we're like, we're gonna murder people?
That's the thing. The reason they got away with it for so long was because they're two 80-year-old women who's suspecting two 80-year-old women? So. And there's like a bigger storyline behind this. It wasn't just them out stabbing people. Like they had reasons.
Okay.
I'm not saying they're good reasons. I'm just saying there was money involved, and it's a whole thing. And the podcast gets in and describes it, and you hear interviews with them. You hear dialogue between them and cops. I mean, it's great. And how they ratted each other out.
How many eppies? No honor amongst old killers?
Well, they put him in a room after they arrested him, and the two ladies couldn't keep their mouths closed.
They said, well, Sally did the first one.
I said it's done in a day.
Yeah.
It was done in an airplane flight.
I know you did.
I listened to every episode on the way here. It's that good.
Spectacular.
So that is what it's called. The Thing About Helen and Olga. Check it out. That is my done in a day pick.
Such a good done in a day. Done in a day.
Done in a day.
Or a murder most foul.
A true crime.
You know what? See, that's what you get. That's what you get. Keep that in the edit. Thank you. Keep that in the edit.
A true crime podcast.
Not at all.
Yes, it's a true crime podcast.
Go to podsauce.com. What else can they do when they're there, Dax?
God, you sign up for our newsletter, but you can also follow us on social media at the Podsauce on Instagram, Facebook. Head on over to YouTube. You can find a video version of us there if you're just listening. And a big shout out to Audacy for having us down here backstage at the Audacy Beach Festival. You're lucky. AJR didn't go on halfway through the show.
Did I would have
left.
Make it through?
We made it through.
Where can they find you, D?
You can find me at Dax Holt.
And you can find me at I am Alesha Renee. Until next time, thank you guys so much for joining us. Be good to yourselves.